All right, so that music video I made up here in my studio with the green screen, and is just one of the demos that I made with this plugin. And I had a lot of fun always making the demos and playing around with this amp sim. The music video was a huge pain in the ass to make. I'm not going to do it probably ever again. But yeah, let's take a look at AMPBOX. This is not a free product. If you're looking for a free amp, this is not it. Look somewhere else. I have other videos on free software. This is not one of them. Mercurial AMPBOX is a paid plugin, and it is not a cheap plugin, but I think what it does is very good. And I also need to disclose that I didn't pay for this. They sent me the suite of all the preamps and AMPBOX. They didn't pay me to make the video, but I got the software for free. And if you want to try this yourself, there is a demo. But the individual plugins here, for example, like this, the Rectofire, this is $90. So each of the preamps is about $90. I'm not going to say whether it's worth it or not. I enjoy it. I'm glad I got to try it. It was something that was essentially prohibitively expensive for me to try on my own. But I am really glad that I did because I actually can't stop playing it. So AMPBOX is a preamp, power amp, cabinet, and effects bundle. Basically, you pay for one of the preamps. There's 6 different preamps that you can buy, or sort of amp models. Highly detailed, very well-made amp models. Euphoria U530, Reaxis, Rectofire 6163, and 1987X SG. So different amp models from Marshall, PV, and Bogner, etc. Different amp models that are classics, really great for like high gain rock metal stuff, and very nice detailed sound with textured tone. I really like that. And then once you pay for one of those, you get the AMPBOX sort of package around it, where you have things like a gate pedal, 2 different compressor pedals, a graphic EQ, a wah, 3 overdrives, 3 distortions. The power amp section is kind of built into this one, but in some of the other models here, there are the separate sort of preamp section. And then the cabinet section here, 2-directional dual mic setup where you can actually drag around these points and change the amp sound, along with 3 different microphone options here. Loading in an IR plus an impulse response reverb. So in the IR section, there's quite a few here, but you can always add in your own by just clicking this box here. After the cabinet, there's a parametric EQ. There are 2 different modulation types. There's a delay pedal with a couple different options here as far as presets and sounds there, and then a reverb, again, with a few different sort of preset sounds. But again, convolution reverb gives you a lot of options there. Overall input and output volume, stereo processing or mono. There is a full MIDI control over every parameter. There is a built-in tuner. I think this is a button to hide all the pop-up windows. Here's another demo. For the main tone on this demo here, I'm using the 6163, obviously the PV 5150 model, using the channel 2, and I think the left and rights are the same or very close to the same settings, at least on the amp. The cabinet section, I'm using a Mesa Modern Blend, which is just multiple mic blend. And yeah, I'm actually using the same model for left and right. Just going through a few different cabinet models there. There's a lot of different sort of tones. I think they all sound pretty good, and it's just a matter of finding the best blend of the... I just realized I am on channel 3. And for bass on this, I'm not doing anything too crazy here. I'm got a compressor, neural amp modeler with a effect that I captured. It's a couple different bass pedals, an EQ and a limiter. I'm also going to the SVT amp for the bass and just another compressor here. So kind of a sort of standard bass processing chain for me anyways. So this other demo, as far as guitar sounds, we got AMPBOX again. I really like the 6160 model. I like the different cabinet options that are available with that. I tend to go for like the Mesa Vintage Blend, something like that. I'm using, second channel, so not the highest gain available, using the overdrive pedal. Some post EQ just to cut out around 4K. And this is a 5 dB drop in volume overall. And then the lead channel, I'm actually turning on and off some of the effects through the song here. So if we solo this and go to the intro, this guitar part has a wah pedal that is automated. There's no delay in this section, just the wah pedal, and I'm using an automation item in Reaper to control the movement of that. So in addition to that, I'm using the Tube Screamer overdrive. Preamp model is the Reaxis, and just using the dual microphone setup for the cabinet section. Again, using the wah pedal, and then using the delay just to extend the sound with echoes. So let's take a new project and set this up as if I was kind of coming up with a tone. Most recently, I was playing around with the Euphoria model and trying to get my head around the very complex layout of this amp. And I've heard that this is very similar to the real thing in terms of what switches are there and how things interact. You may notice that as you go through here, there's on the different channel things, they light up to show you which ones are active, but it is kind of confusing when there's like a volume 1, 3, 2, there's a gain control, and they're not, the things for the different channels aren't together. You could argue that it's more accurate to the real thing. It's a little less ergonomic. To me, at least, it looks like an amp. Something I never liked about the Helix software, for example, from Line 6, it doesn't look like an amp. It looks like a list of parameters. And if you're used to the real thing, it just doesn't work right for me. And at the same time, it's not a dumbed down, simplified version of the real thing. Maybe just one sort of channel. You get access to everything that is in the original, and then a little bit more. The different channels tend to have like a boost mode. There's settings for like excursion. There's presence control. You can turn off the power amp modeling. So let's start with channel 2. So this is your sort of power amp volume, and then there's the gain control. I usually start with the power amp turned up quite a bit because I want power amp distortion more than preamp or like pedal distortion. Obviously, that's really loud. So we can turn that down here. Or you saw me use this trick before, turn down the parametric EQ. Sometimes you got to turn down quite a bit to get that power amp distortion that's not like clipping everything else in your chain. It could use a little more bite. We can use the gain control here. But really this is not like the super high gain tight sound that I'm looking for. So we can try setting the structure to high, which makes it more tight and higher gain. There's also a boost. I think I do prefer it on low, and I would probably use the Super Overdrive or the Tube Screamer. Then we're on channel 2, so we're looking at this section here, pre-EQ channel 2. There's 3 different modes. So there's like a neutral and then B1 and B2. To be honest, I don't know what they mean by B in there, if B maybe is bass. But basically sort of 3 different EQs before the preamp section that changes how it sounds quite a bit. So here's N, or natural, I guess. More mid-range, more bite, and B2. So B1 is the most aggressive of those tones. There's also this plexi mode, which, to be honest, I can't really explain what it does. It's kind of pleasing, but it is a less tight, high gain sound than what I have in my head. So let's check out this excursion section here. So that gets really weird. Seems to like really compress in the low end. And then the T mode, which is maybe like medium, loose, tight, or something like that. I think M is best for me. Roll. All right, so that's sounding pretty good. Let's just tweak the cabinet. Honestly, tweaking the cabinet makes more of a difference than most of these other settings here in terms of like dialing into tone. 4x12, vintage 30, modern T75. Kind of like that one. G12M, K120S. Really changes the sound. Not a fan of that one. Same models again, but with EQ applied. I like the G12. I'll go with the EQ'd version. And then there's 3 different mics, and we can combine 2 of them, and we can blend one or the other, and we can phase flip them to dial in the tone. So let's go with a single mic. So towards the center and up at the top is the closest to the center of the cone, and then we can go further away and further back. So we'll start with here. More treble here, more bass here. kind of like that. Let's check out the R21. But when I'm dialing guitar tones, I find it best to blend them 50-50. Polarity invert 1. We're looking for the most cancellation. Generally looking for where does it get the quietest when the two mics combine, or where is it getting the most like annoying fizzy. I'm going to try there. And when they're blended together, it should sound better than either mic on its own. More textured, more interesting, best of both worlds, really. And then there's all the different impulse response models where you don't really get any options for changing the tone, but you just choose a different cabinet mic combination that you don't have any control over. I mean, that's a pretty aggressive, nice tone. Like, I'm getting a little bit of noise in here, so I'm going to turn on the gate. Immediately, that gets rid of the noise. The thing that this kind of lacks, I'll show you in Amplitude. We go over to the cabinet section. Like, if you think about when you're recording a guitar, you kind of are limited in the space that you have. And you have some options of, am I going to record this in the middle of the room? Am I going to record this in the closet? Is it better to have this in a small room or a big room? Is it going to be close to a wall or far? Then how do we capture the sound of that room? One of the nice things about Amplitude is there actually is different options for the room. And you can say that, you know, some of that stuff is baked into the impulse responses. Not always, right? There isn't always a room mic blended in. And with Amplitude, you don't get to choose the mics, but you can set their levels and the width, and you get the choice of the room, which is really, really helpful. It greatly enhances the feeling of realism. You may not use it in the mix all the time, but playing with this option on makes it sound more real. So how do we emulate that kind of thing in AmpBox or any other plugin? We're going to use the impulse response reverb. I didn't really like any of these ones too much, the built-in ones. But if we go to my impulse response library, the SPX 90, the early reflections one, that kind of sounded interesting. If we go to maybe like a 1 out of 10 blend here. It sort of gives the feeling of being in a room. Maybe like 1.5 or so. And I really like that they added in keyboard shortcuts for this. When the last thing you touched was the cabinet, left and right arrows will go between the different cabinets, and then shift left and right, which you can generally do one-handed without dropping your guitar pick, is changing the impulse response reverb. I think that's a really helpful little shortcut that they added in there. Just to add a little bit of a room ambience to the sound. Yeah, I think it is really helpful just to make it feel more real, especially in headphones. So yeah, that took kind of a while to set up a tone, but if you're not explaining it, it goes pretty quick. I mean, let's just go to channel 3. One of my shortcuts is like setting each of these to like 6 out of 10. And now that I've got a cabinet and an impulse response that I like for the reverb, let's just do like high tone, the high structure, and we will yeah, B1 I like, the master. Let's see how that compares to the previous tone. Pretty high gain, fairly tight, nice mid-range. Feels fairly dynamic. Overdrives. Let's just turn on this overdrive. So any of that flubby low end that was there before is now gone. Lots of bite. Let's switch this to the Greed Smasher. The settings generally stay the same. It's 3 knobs. And the SD1. Any one of those really kind of just does the trick. I don't have a problem with any of those. Different preamp, why not? Let's go with the Rectofire. Yeah, okay. Channel 2, vintage tone, present 6, bass 6, mid 6, treble 6. And unlike the real hardware, when you flip the switch, you are able to keep all of your EQ settings. So like when you're switching tones, I mean, maybe, yeah, it's annoying that you have to change the EQ for each mode, but also you get to dial in the EQ for each of the channels. So you really have 4 channels with different master, presence, bass, mid, treble, and gain controls for each. That's a nice thing that you don't have on the real thing. All right, let's go to channel 1, which is the modern mode. Yeah, I mean, it has a lot of gain. I don't particularly like that modern version. Channel 2, vintage. Too much bass. And with the tube screamer. I completely forgot to show you what guitar I was using today. So that's my my Solar. This is a perfectly usable tone in just a couple minutes. Once you learn the differences between the normal, modern, normal, vintage, channel 1 and 2 mode buttons here, you kind of dial it in really quick. And of course, there's a ton of presets for each amp. So you can always spend an afternoon trying out these different tones with the different amps and then save your own presets. I did save some presets. I used Reaper's built-in preset system, but I should probably switch it over to the AmpBox preset system. So I've showed you the Euphoria, the 6160, the Rectofire preset. Let's do clean chords. I'd say that a lot of the presets come out sounding really loud. I end up having to turn them down quite a lot. And to use them in the mix, I find that my approach of using the parametric EQ, using this trim or the master out, that gets you in a more usable volume level for actually using it in a mix. Double tracking, triple tracking, or combining it with bass and drums. So let's do some like pros and cons, I guess. Pro, it sounds good. You can dial in great tones. Cons, there's not a lot of different amp models available, and they all cost $90, so basically the cost of a new pedal or the cost of sometimes a guitar. Buying the whole set is like spending about $600. You can get a great pedal board for that much money. In terms of like quality of the amp emulation, I think this is like 10 out of 10. In terms of like value and convenience, maybe it's quite a bit lower than that. Another con would be that the signal chain can't be adjusted. You can't, for example, put the delay before the amp. It has to be after. It is after the cabinet as well, which always seems more of like a mixed decision rather than something that aids in the performance. So I tended not to use the delay too much when playing around with this. I like having a delay on my pedal board. I own many different delay pedals. I always have that option of using them. But for this demo, I found it limiting to have the delays after the amp and cabinet. I like that they just make it really simple to import impulse responses for the cabinet or for the reverb section, something like Amplitude. They don't give you that option. But then on the other hand, there's not a lot of options for microphones and things like that in the cabinet section where you can actually move things around and sort of get involved in the tone and experiment and do some engineering rather than just choosing presets or just choosing impulse responses. Getting the job done with impulse responses, there's nothing really wrong with that. One more thing before we go, I just want to show you a little trick here. If we go to like the preamp mode Euphoria, for example, if we go down to this button at the bottom, the little cog amp grill, there's modern, vintage, and none. I saw it on some pictures online, and I couldn't figure out for a long time how to change that. Some of the amp models have that. The Rectofire has that. Yeah. Which is pretty neat. A little nice extra. Might be something that you can use to differentiate the left and right guitars. You have different sort of UI for the amp. Might just help you remember which one you're looking at. Another really nice option here is in the tuner, and you can have normal where the signal level passes through normally. You hear your guitar tone. There's a dim setting, which I think drops at like 20 dB or something like that, quite a bit, but you can still hear your tone a little bit, and then completely muted for silent tuning. Yeah, it's just really nice to have that option. I find the tuner works well enough. No problems with that at all. Pretty interesting software, and I'm glad I got a chance to check this out. This would probably be something that I would skip if it wasn't offered to me for free. I would just never get around to trying it, but I'm glad I did. I'm really glad I did. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you found this interesting, and yeah, stay tuned for more videos about things and stuff. Hit the like button if you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, follow me on Facebook and Twitter, support the Reaper blog through Patreon, visit reaper.blog for more tutorials.